Hello and welcome to today's episode of Owning Your Menopause, the podcast where we cut through the noise and empower you to feel fitter, calmer and stronger in midlife and beyond. Today I am joined by someone whose work I admire greatly. She is a registered nutritionist and author and has become one of the UK's leading voices in women's health, known for her evidence-based, no-nonsense approach to nutrition during perimenopause and menopause. She's passionate about helping women feel informed, not overwhelmed, and her practical advice has supported thousands of women to make sustainable changes to the way they eat, move, and live. In this episode, we will be diving into everything from gut health, supplements, weight changes, and practical midlife nutrition hacks. Whether you're looking to feel more in control of your symptoms or simply want to future-proof your health, you are going to take away so much from this conversation. And not only is she all that, she's a great friend as well. So I am really excited to speak to the incredible Emma Bardwell today. Good morning,
Wow.
Emma.
What a lovely, lovely intro. And it's so lovely to see you. I haven't seen you in real life for quite some time, have I? So, this will do for now.
For now, we'll have to sort that out very shortly.
Yeah.
So Emma, I'm going to kind of go back a little bit because I always like to find out why my guests are in this particular field. So what got you into, I guess, nutrition in the first place, and then why specifically women's health, menopause?
Yeah, great question. So like you, I think we've got quite a similar story. And actually, I think quite similar to lots of people of our age in this industry right now, in the menopause space anyway. I came to it because I was going through it myself and I wasn't getting the help that I needed. And I kind of saw this disparity that I know we're all aware of, in women's health particularly, and even more so, on an even more kind of granular level within menopause. So I was having all these symptoms and basically I just wasn't getting the help that I needed. And so I thought it kind of coincided too with me getting made redundant I used to work in advertising. So I retrained, repurposed, I recalibrated, and I decided to kind of try and bridge that gap. And that's what I've been doing ever since. That was 11 years ago or something. And so, yeah, really, that's where I've come from.
Have you always had like an interest in nutrition or food in general? Like, obviously, as you're saying, that previous job, marketing into nutrition, it's quite different. Did you have an interest in food before?
Yeah, I did actually. So from a very, very young age, I was doing short courses in nutrition. So actually that leap didn't feel like so much of a leap. It felt quite natural. And I'm delighted that I did actually, because it wasn't just about this kind of love of nutrition. And I'm by no means a brilliant cook, as you will know from anybody who follows me will know there's nothing particularly beautiful or clever about what I'm doing. But what I really am hell-bent on is looking after women, because I think at this time of life there is a real drop-off where women, they start to reduce their hours, they go part-time, they quit their jobs because of the symptoms that they're going through. And I think I really, really I love women. I want to do everything I can to make their lives better and to really help them thrive. And you will know this too, that this time of life is incredibly empowering and liberating, actually. When you're in the middle of all of those symptoms, it can feel incredibly discombobulating. But once you come through that, actually, it is a time of immense change. And really, I feel, age 53 now, coming out of that menopause transition, I would say I'm postmenopausal now, I would say that I feel like I'm just getting to grips with how I want the rest of my life to look. And that's what I really would love for all women.
I love that, and I think that's such an empowering message. And also, I know you've got girls, you've got two girls, so you would, like you with my daughter, I want to make sure that they don't experience my own journey and that they are as equipped as possible when they get to this stage without feeling fearful. You've kind of lined up my next question, which is what I love about this amazing synergy that we have. Obviously, you've pointed out it's come from a personal experience, but also the one thing I love, not the one thing, I love lots of things about you, but another thing that I love is that there is so much conflicting advice And so let's just get straight into it and say, what are your nutritional non-negotiables that women should focus on during perimenopause and menopause? And I know, and this is an opportunity to say, that it is in this wonderful book that you have written, the 30-gram plan, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah, okay. So I have summarised it. Latest thinking, because things do shift a little bit, don't they? You know, we've been doing this for a while and there's new research coming out all the time. But essentially, yeah, that book it contains my kind of current thinking. And I don't think that this is going to change. And also, by the way, it's nothing kind of earth-shattering. It is basically around these 3 pillars, which is to eat more protein, more fibre and more plants. And I think currently the protein conversation is getting a ton of airtime. Probably the fibre and the plants they go hand in hand. That is probably the area that I think is missing, because fibre is really unsexy and everyone just associates it with doing a poo or being constipated or having diarrhea and digestion, basically. So that is the thing that I would love. I mean, we could talk about protein, but if people are listening and thinking, God, if there's one thing that I can take away from this chat, it's to eat more plants and to really kind of focus on your fibre. And I can go into why, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be important, because it does bring me on to, obviously, my next question, which would lead in very nicely, was sort of the gut health and how obviously our gut influences the hormones, the mood and the symptoms of menopause. And obviously that will come down to fibre, because what I've learned from people like you and other amazing people in the space is how our gut is like its own little world. I find it, for somebody who's a little bit neurodiverse, terrifying to think that, like, I have this life form in my gut. I very much think we just think it's our brain that is kind of there, but we know that gut-brain axis is intrinsically linked. We know that we need to feed the microbiomes that then thrive and help the rest of our body function. And yes, protein is great, but it's fibre that we need, and the plant diversity to do that.
Yeah, and the beauty is, you can get protein from your plants as well as fibre. So it isn't like you've got to choose one or the other. And it doesn't mean that you have to be solely vegan or plant-based. Lots of the research is actually showing that it doesn't matter what kind of diet you have, as long as you are making room for those plants alongside meat or fish or dairy, it is going to do you a huge amount of good. So yeah, you've touched on the big ones, really. Fibre is great for everything, but essentially what we are kind of deducing now from this emerging research is that it has a marked impact on our gut microbiome, and also within this microbiome we've got something called the estrobolome. The research is emerging, so it's not there's still lots of work to be done on it. I don't think we've got to that point where we can say you need to eat this kind of this specific strain in order to manage your menopause symptoms. But what we can say categorically is that there is a link between eating more fibre and reduced symptoms, better long-term health outcomes, which I know you're really interested in too, better cardiovascular health, better mood, better skin, all of those things even better sleep, all of those things that we are, all of us, really interested in and can take up quite a lot of sort of brain space. So yeah, eating your 30 grams a day. I know it can seem maybe a little bit overwhelming for people who might be, quite a way off. Most of us are only getting about 18 grams at the moment in the UK. In the US, it's even less. So, what I don't want is for people to kind of suddenly try and shoehorn all of this fibre into their diets, because they are going to get these symptoms and it's going to put them off, bloating and gas and kind of all this kind of gastrointestinal discomfort. But what we always say is to go low and slow. So you're introducing, like anything, like any change, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's, exercise and diet, you're introducing these changes very small, incrementally, basically. So go low and slow. Just start by, adding in a tablespoon of ground flax. Start with a couple of tablespoons of beans. That might be every day, that might be every other day, it might be once a week. You can kind of train your gut to adapt and to be much more kind of welcoming of this increased fibre.
That's interesting. I love that, because it's sort of, we've got protein, we've got fibre, we've got our plants, and we very much are sort of like my parents' generation, which is, I guess, where we learn via the way we grow up. You know, it was very much meat and two veg. And obviously, you know, as we learn more about what our body needs, we obviously learn more about food, and it's very difficult to, I guess, unlearn things and to relearn. And I always say that with exercise. I want to talk on one of the things which is probably more the gut health stuff, because like me, you want to make things accessible to people. And I have done an awful lot of these chats or talks and found myself only on a panel the other day. And, you know, people were talking about this, you know, the gut microbes, and talking about kimchi and sauerkraut. And for me, that's great. But it's not for your everyday person, you know, who we have to think about the constrictions of life and, you know, what we can afford. So, I mean, could you give me 3 affordable foods that people could add to their diet to get that fibre, that plant health that doesn't involve something expensive, I guess, like, you know, kimchi and sauerkraut? I know you can make it, but again, that's overwhelming.
Well, and also it's just not accessible for lots of people, is it? You know, so I'm with you all the way. We need to make this really easy for people, otherwise they're just not going to stick to it. 3 things I would say are, let's think BBL. Everyone can remember BBL. We're not talking Brazilian bottom lift. We are talking berries. Berries, so buy them frozen, buy them mixed. Need to rely on wild blueberries that have been, you know, brought in from Peru. You can buy frozen mixed veg, and then instantly you've got 4 or 5 different plants. You know, bung them on your porridge, put them in your chia pudding, have them as a snack, whatever. Bung them in a smoothie. So easy. Berries. What's my other one? Beans. So, for example, tins of beans. Pea from Lidl, from Aldi. Super easy. You can also buy those mixed, and you can chuck them into casseroles and soups and blend them into, you know, your spag bowl. We're not talking about kind of far-flung or exotic ingredients here at all. And then my L would be leafy greens. And again, you can buy them frozen, so much cheaper. There's no food waste. You know, they last for ages. Brilliant in smoothies. Again, you can wilt them in, you know, right at the end into your curry, or your, you know, if you've got like a pressure cooker or kind of like a crock pot, if you're using one of those, they are just so easy. So those would be my 3.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the idea of that frozen, because I think, again, with the information that's been out there, we are very much at the moment, like you say, protein rich, and then cooking from scratch. And I think when I think cooking from scratch, I'm thinking, like you're saying, you know, something fresh, and then often things come up, you know, vegetables, whatever, my leafy greens go off, I've got food waste, and I always forget about that power of the frozen veg, like you say, that you can just add at the end to really pimp up a dish with all of the key nutrients.
Also, just to jump in, because I think this is important. I think when people look at Instagram accounts, they're like, oh my God, you know, there's like every day this person is like, oh, what I eat in a day, and they're making these, you know, immense kind of feasts. Actually, you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. I eat the same breakfast pretty much 5 days out of 7. I just swap little bits of it to keep it interesting and to keep it varied. So, you know, just most of us eat kind of between 7 and 10, I think, meals on repeat. But you just need to find slightly clever ways to, like you say, to pimp them up and to keep them kind of fun and a little bit more diverse, so that you are kind of introducing new types of fibre and new types of plant into your diet.
Yeah, and do you know, it's funny because I know that like my kids, they're just annoyed at me all the time because I mentioned like gut health and, you know, protein, and they'll get it one day, they'll thank me. But I made the other day like some fajitas, and I used black beans, and I didn't say anything, I just made the fajitas. It's normally chicken fajitas, and I made them, and they were like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, because it's still got the cheese, it's still got the salsa, it's got the peppers, it's got everything. But it's I think sometimes it's just putting it on the plate and, you know, letting them explore it without, because kids by default, I was one of those kids, it was like lentils, beans, kidney beans, and like now that's all I want to eat. So it's very much one of those things where I'm you know, trying, and I think the power of the black bean is amazing because it's got so much protein in it. It's so good. Now, the one other just food group that we haven't touched on, and I want to, because again, I think it does get very much put to the back of the pile, especially midlife women, is fat. And again, we know that fats help with satiety, it helps balance our hormones. And for so long, and certainly when I was growing up, the poor old avocado was so demonized. Yes, it's got a lot of calories, but wow, it's got so many benefits to it. So can we just have a little woohoo for the fats?
Yeah. Let's do a shout out for the fats. And yeah, avocado is amazing because it is full of fibre too. And it's quite rare that you would find a fat source and a fibre source too, apart from nuts and seeds. So yeah, big thumbs up to avocados. But can be quite expensive and sometimes travel quite a lot of air miles to get here. So there are lots of ways that you can do fats, and you're right, they are absolutely crucial. They're really important for things like skin health. So, there's lots of people kind of spending a fortune on collagen. Actually, if you are on a really low-fat diet, you might be far better off, just making sure that you've got some nuts and seeds in there, some oily fish. It doesn't have to be wild-farmed salmon. It could be mackerel from a tin. You can get fats from things like extra virgin olive oil. And I know instantly that sounds a bit kind of like, can I swear on here or not?
Yeah.
Like kind of wellness wankery. Oh, extra virgin olive oil, I say. But, Lidl and Aldi do brilliant sources of, lots of different types of oils. So you don't have to be spending a fortune. Just get the best. When it comes to oils particularly, I think it's good to get the best that you can afford. And just having them is better than not having them, So, yeah, you don't have to be perfect all the time. But, yeah, nuts and seeds you can buy in bulk. Again, I always have a little kind of shaker thing of mixed nuts and seeds on my table, talking about wellness wankery. But you just shake it on to all sorts of things and instantly you've got another 6 or 7 plants there. So yeah, don't be afraid of fats by any stretch. They're really important. They are the backbone of hormones. And equally the same goes for just food in general. I see a lot of women who are restricting to such a degree that they are not only exhausted and kind of really fatigued and they're hangry, their mood is all over the place, sometimes their hair is falling out, but also, that has an impact on your hormones. Your hormones are fairly expensive in terms of how your body sees things, as is your hair and your skin and your nails. So often those are the first things to kind of fall off a cliff if you are not giving yourself enough energy.
Yeah, I love that, and I totally and utterly support that, because again, a lot of the women that I'll work with, that you'll work with, it's the fatigue, it's the lack of energy, they're over exercising, they're under eating, they're restricting their bodies, and it doesn't work. 2 very quick things, because I have to ask this. Oils, you've mentioned the olive oil. Now, there again is a lot of noise out there about...
Please don't say seed oils.
Seed oils. And I mean, could we just maybe very quickly try and surmise that? Because I actually use sesame oil and quite a lot. I make a delicious raw slaw where I have a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of soy, a splash of sesame oil, carrots, cabbage. I put some pumpkin seeds in. It's bloody delicious, and I'm going to carry on eating it. Am I going to kill myself?
Absolutely not. This is one of the biggest nutrition myths that is circulating at the moment. It's a huge topic and it's incredibly nuanced. But if we just go into the top line, there is no robust evidence whatsoever to say that seed oils are inflammatory, because that's basically what most people's beef with them. And actually, talking of beef, most people would be saying that you're better off, the kind of carnivore crowd are saying you're better off swapping to beef tallow or something like that. This is not. It's just, it makes no sense whatsoever. And actually, if somebody wants to kind of delve into this in a lot more detail, check out Simon Hill. He's brilliant. He's got 2-hour-long podcasts on this, and you will leave that, unless you are a complete kind of carnivore and you're kind of got your hands over your ears and you're not listening, you will leave that in no 2 minds about the truth. I think a lot of the issue with seed oils is that people are conflating seed oils with UPFs. And
yes.
Lots of seed oil is found in UPFs, but it's not the seed oil that's inherently bad. It's the fact that you are eating something that is low in protein, low in fibre, quite high in sugar, quite high in, quite often, I don't know. But it's not giving you a lot of nutrients. So that is the issue, I think.
Okay, I'm glad we cleared that one up. The other one I want to clear up, because I feel like I quote you on this one, and I now use it, but I use it where I think there is method to my madness. Then 2%, 5% Greek yogurt. You almost spat your coffee out there. So I was always using 5% because I wanted to get my fats. But then when I think back and I look at it, I had my 5%, I had my peanut butter, I had my pumpkin seeds, I had some walnuts. I was adding an awful lot of fat to the fat. So for me, and again, I think we agree on a lot of these things, everybody's journey is unique. You have to find out what works for you. Because for me, actually, going to 0% and adding those peanut butters and those nuts and actually, maybe some dried fruit, some real fruit, whatever, has made a difference. I did feel like I was getting just the 5% felt too heavy for me. But like my mum was here recently, she went, why have you got the 0%? I like the 5% because I find, So again, it's preference and then what you're adding. And actually she doesn't add anything else to that 5% other than a bit of granola. So therefore she's then getting her fat. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, again, so I've got quite a lengthy for Instagram reel on this because it's probably the question that I get asked, the most, and so much so that I've actually got these because I'm always talking about them. So for anyone who can't see this, I'm waving around a 0% and a 5% Greek yogurt container. Yeah, the short answer is, for lots of people, again, I think the issue is that most people, when they're thinking about 0%, they're thinking, oh my God, I've been told, that you shouldn't have these diet yogurts because when they take the fat out, they put loads of added sugars in them. But when we're talking about Greek yogurt, that isn't the case. All it means is it's using skimmed milk and it's been strained. So, that's where the 0% fat comes in. It's got no added sugars whatsoever. It's still got all the live bacteria. It's still got possibly a little bit more calcium. I think when I'm talking about the 0%, mostly is when women are wanting to lose some body fat and they are thinking about their energy requirements, because 0% fat has half the calories of 5%. So, it's horses for courses. If you're not worried about if you've got no body fat to lose, if that's not one of your health goals actually, and you enjoy 5%, Jesus, go for it. It tastes really creamy. It's amazing. Lots of people find that they, possibly eat less of it because it fills them up more. I think there's a lot of trial and error when it comes to nutrition, and this kind of nuance doesn't get talked about on Instagram. And I think that's why people often kind of, they're watching somebody's reel and they end up feeling really scared, because the people who aren't qualified don't talk in these kind of measured ways. They're very much like, this is good and this is bad. They're talking in kind of this binary way because it gets clicks, right? Whereas actually it's far harder and more, lengthy, as you can hear, to talk about all the different nuances within food. And there is a lot of nuance. So one of my takeaways, I think, for anybody listening is, if somebody's making you feel scared about a particular food, or if they're talking in this very binary way, honestly, I would mute them, unfollow them, or I would at least be a bit like, what are their credentials? Are they actually qualified to talk about this? And what are they proposing as a kind of, there's always a solution. It's quite often a powder or a supplement. I would love women to be, everybody on social media, just to be a little bit more discerning than they currently are. Because I get a lot of questions in my DMs and it's like, God, really? Do you actually think that, I don't know, ground flax is going to give you cancer? If it sounds too ridiculous, it often is.
Yeah. I mean, again, the synergy, because my next question, supplements, and you just mentioned supplements in that last one. I mean, again, you've touched on it, so much misinformation, and let's go there. I mean, I'm asked about supplements all the time. You've mentioned collagen already and talked about fat perhaps being a better option than spending a lot of money on collagen powders, protein powders, creatine, all of those things. I mean, creatine for me would be a non-negotiable. I'd love your quick insight on that. Protein powders, I think, absolutely have a place for someone who isn't reaching their protein targets through food, but I don't think it should be a substitute or the go-to. And then collagen. I mean, let's have a quick touch on those three. And then I think it's just fair to say, maybe like, the magnesium, the omegas, the vitamin D, and that perhaps everything else outside of that, or your multivitamin promising to cure every menopausal symptom that costs £150 to swallow might not be the right way. So maybe let's just kind of like do a quick whole section on that.
Yeah, okay. So supplements. Obviously, I have to, this is so obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Food is always first, but obviously we are busy and stretched and we can't always do that. So I do think they have a place. I actually, out of those three that you mentioned, I think protein powder can be incredibly helpful, convenient. It's not cheap, but it is, a great way to bump up your protein. And actually, if you're talking about collagen, rather than going straight to collagen, start looking at the amount of protein that you're eating, because collagen is protein, right? So I think a lot of people who take collagen and finding all these kind of amazing benefits actually are the people who weren't eating enough protein in the first place. And collagen isn't even a complete protein. So you're far better off focusing on your protein than you are spending loads on collagen. That said, there is some emerging research, mild to moderate benefits in skin, because let's face it, I think that's why most people are taking it. So if it's within your budget and you want to try it, absolutely, there is nothing probably that's going to be detrimental. There's possibly some question over collagen and women who are going through breast cancer, but that's largely, I think, because the studies haven't been done. There's also a kind of slight question mark over some kind of growth factor. So that is definitely something to talk to your oncology team about. The thing that really kind of irks me at the moment is electrolytes. I don't know how you feel about this, but it's like,
I don't take electrolytes. I drink water.
Precisely, and eat food and season it with salt. It's like, everybody is jumping onto this electrolyte bandwagon. I'm seeing, hatha yoga teachers who are kind of, they're pushing it. It's like, God, unless you are sweating profusely or working kind of, if you're, an elite kind of athlete, possibly you need some electrolytes. Otherwise, seriously, save your money. Vitamin D goes without saying, it's September, so everyone, pretty much everyone should be jumping on board that right now. One thing that we haven't talked about, which I think is really important, is to get a blood panel done, so rather than kind of thinking, I'm just going to throw all of these different things at it and hope for the best. If you get a blood panel done, you are going to know where you are, where your levels are at categorically. So you can, I know it's difficult, but you can ask your GP. You can get private ones done. They are, 79, 89 quid for pretty much a full panel. That's not going to be available to everybody, but you can put together especially if you haven't had one for ages, you can put together a pretty good argument for your GP, particularly if you are experiencing things like hair loss, you've got restless legs, you maybe think that there is potentially something wrong with your thyroid, or if you've got thyroid dysregulation in your family. You could talk about heart health, all GPs' eyes will prick up, and they are far more likely to listen to you if you are saying that you're worried about, LDL cholesterol, about blood sugar, so you can get your HbA1c measured. All of these are in the back of my book, actually, and it tells you the kind of levels that you should be aiming for. I would do that rather than spend your money on that, or your time on that, rather than, kind of instantly going to supplements all the time.
I think you've hit I think you made a really valuable point there, because I think people are really quick to, something pops up on their feed to buy it, rather than think, actually, do you know what, if I spent that £79, I wouldn't spend the £150. Or if I spent that £79, I'd be able to just realise it was just the one vitamin that needed replacing. And I think also it's important to say, and again, obviously I love your take on this, that a lot of these multivitamins, that they aren't giving you necessarily the recommended daily amount because it's multi. And then also some of the people that I've worked with, or women that I've talked to, they might be taking, let's say, a creatine that's got other things in it, and then they're taking another supplement that's got another thing in it that's got the same thing as that, and then they're taking something before bed that's then got the same as the two things before. So actually you're completely giving yourself an imbalance of different vitamins, minerals, because you're overloading, you're kind of crossing over.
Yeah, more is not always more. And I think people think that because supplements are quote unquote natural, that they're just going to pee them out and your body will know what to do. Actually, vitamin A, D, E, K, they are all fat soluble. You can store them in adipose tissue, which means that they can, it's unlikely, it's rare, but they can build up to toxic levels. So this is definitely something to think about. There was something else I wanted to say about that, and I now cannot remember what it is, but yeah.
Take some creatine.
Yeah,
it'll stop your brain fog.
Okay, so this is another thing. Again, emerging evidence showing that, there's this kind of possible link with better cognition. But we're talking kind of like 10 grams, and a lot of women aren't even kind of managing 3 to 5 grams, which is the current recommendation. So if you are noticing that you are bloated and nauseous and, you've got all this water retention and, it's not for you. What you really need to be doing, and I know obviously you know this, is to be lifting some bloody weights, doing some resistance training. Stop trying to kind of jump over the kind of boring basics that are hard to do sometimes to kind of get this miracle end result, because often it isn't in the supplement, it's in getting the foundations right.
Yeah, you're right, and I can't take more than 5. 5 is definitely my max, if not 4. I've worked my way up to that, and I know that is all I can take. I can't actually take any more than that. Right, I'm going to ask you one more question,
everyone,
because
right?
No, I know,
everyone.
Like everything. I'm going to ask you one more question, because otherwise I could keep you here all day, because the other thing that I would love to have touched on just with your last point there was, as you said, you can't jump through hoops. And obviously at the moment there are a lot of people jumping through hoops by taking weight loss injections. But as I say, I think that's for a whole nother episode, because what's really important, obviously, just to say, if anyone is doing that, I'm neither for nor against it, as I'm sure Emma isn't. What we would just love, and I won't speak on Emma's behalf, is that you take everything we've just said in terms of protein, fibre, plants, fat, and just make sure that if you are on those, that you are eating a really balanced diet to support your body. Do you want to just add anything to that?
Yeah, I've actually got some content coming out on GLPs, because obviously they're not going anywhere, and they are, getting better and better. There's new and new iterations of them all the time. And they are obviously being quite widely misused and misprescribed, but obviously they are game-changing for a lot of people, and I'm working with a lot of people who are taking them, and it's been absolutely life-changing for them. And it means that they've got rid of the food noise so that they can then think about eating more protein and fibre, which they couldn't do before. They've lost a bit of weight so they can think about exercising and all of those things. So yeah, they are part and parcel now of our lives and our kind of this space. So I think I'm all for them, but I do have slight reservations about them being misprescribed and not being prescribed with the right kind of caveats behind them, which is, as you've just mentioned, I won't repeat it, but it's very much a 360 approach with all things kind of health and wellness, and GLPs are no exception.
Okay, thank you. My last question: if you could give one message to women about food during menopause, during perimenopause, what would it be?
About food?
Diet, anything. Just your one takeaway.
Okay, I'll try and keep it short, but there is no...
Other than buy your book, obviously.
Diet. Yeah, I know, well, obviously, but I was too embarrassed to say that. There is no one menopause diet, what works for your neighbour or your sister or your best friend isn't necessarily going to work for you. There's a bit of trial and error involved. Don't be afraid to try new things and to kind of suck it and see, and to, I don't know, do it for 8 weeks or 12 weeks. You haven't got to keep reinventing the wheel. And actually what sticks for most people is the boring basics, is the stuff that you already know. When you buy my book, you're not going to learn anything that you haven't been told before. It's basically eat more protein, more plants and more fibre. But what I am doing is kind of translating that research into food that actually tastes and looks good and that is accessible to people, because a lot of women come to me and they just simply don't know what to eat. They're really kind of overwhelmed. So in a nutshell, sorry, too long, if I wanted to just kind of put it succinctly, just keep it simple and keep doing it. Rinse and repeat the simple stuff. It honestly works.
Thank you. And if you haven't got Emma's book, please do. The 30 Grand Plan. Emma, I know people probably do already follow you, but where can they find you if they need to?
I'm at Emma.Bardwell. I'm quite good, at answering DMs. Come over there. There's tons of free resources, free recipes, free advice. I try and keep it positive. So I'd love to see you over there.
Emma, thank you so much for your time this morning, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you somewhere very soon.
For a big squeeze, I hope so.
Big squeeze.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you.